Jonathan Reyes had always believed that the world became safer the moment he held his daughter Aria for the first time. After losing his wife in a tragic accident, every breath he took felt like it existed only to protect this tiny girl with big brown eyes. That's why, on a quiet Thursday evening inside a McDonald's in Seattle, the sound he heard froze every muscle in his body. He was standing near the counter, waiting for their order, when a small trembling voice drifted out from the women's restroom. It was soft at first, like a whisper carried by air conditioning vents, but he recognized it instantly. Aria's voice. His heart stopped. "Please, I promise, I won't do it again. Please don't hurt me." Jonathan felt the blood rush out of his face. That wasn't a normal cry, that was fear, real fear, and his daughter was alone in that restroom. His mind tried to make sense of it. Maybe someone else was there, maybe she had slipped, maybe she was scared of the hand dryer again. But the shaking in her voice said otherwise. His instincts roared louder than logic. He ran. The closer he got to the restroom, the clearer Aria's sobs became. His breath turned ragged, palms sweating as panic surged with every step. Someone was hurting his daughter, right now. He slammed his shoulder into the door. It didn't budge. Someone was holding it shut. "Aria!" he shouted, voice cracking. "Baby, I'm right here." He stepped back, adrenaline taking over, and kicked the door with everything he had. The latch snapped. The door burst open. What he saw inside didn't make sense at first. It was too wrong, too impossible to process in one heartbeat. His newlywed wife, Savannah, was crouched beside Aria, gripping the little girl's arms so tightly her knuckles were white. And on Savannah's face, something twisted, cold, almost delighted. Jonathan froze in the doorway as Savannah slowly turned her head toward him and smiled. "You came just in time to see everything." Jonathan stood frozen, his mind refusing to accept what his eyes were seeing. Savannah Hale, the woman he had married just 5 months ago, the woman who had convinced him she adored Aria, was gripping the child's arm with a force that didn't match the sweet persona she always displayed. Her smile, slow and unnatural, sent a chill through Jonathan's spine. Aria scrambled toward him, burying her face in his leg, trembling so violently he could feel it through his jeans. Savannah rose calmly, brushing invisible dust off her skirt. "She's exaggerating," she said, her tone bored. "You know how dramatic toddlers can be." Jonathan stared at her, stunned by how casual she sounded, as if he hadn't just heard his daughter begging for mercy. He tried to steady his breathing, but every instinct in him screamed that something had been wrong long before tonight. He replayed the last few weeks in his mind, Aria crying when Savannah offered to tuck her in, her sudden fear of shadows, the way she clung to him every morning. He had blamed it on the adjustment of having a stepmother, but now those signs felt like alarms he had ignored. "Savannah, what were you doing to her?" Jonathan asked, voice shaking. Savannah's eyes darkened for a brief moment before she plastered on a smile again. "I was teaching her not to wander. She ran in here alone. I grabbed her arm so she wouldn't hurt herself." The explanation sounded rehearsed. Jonathan crouched to check Aria's arm. A red mark was forming, his stomach twisted. When he stood again, Savannah's expression had shifted, more irritated than apologetic. "John, don't make this bigger than it is. You're tired, you're still grieving, you're seeing things that aren't there." Her confidence, her manipulation, the way she tried to flip his fear back onto him, it was all too polished. For the first time, Jonathan saw someone he didn't recognize living behind his wife's face, and he realized he had no idea what Savannah was truly capable of. Aria tugged his sleeve and whispered, "Daddy, she said you won't believe me." Jonathan carried Aria out of the restroom, his heart pounding with a familiar ache he thought he had buried. Losing his late wife, Marissa, had shattered him, leaving him terrified of failing their daughter. Back then, people told him time would heal, but grief had carved itself into his ribs like a permanent bruise. When Savannah entered his life at a charity gala, she seemed like the first breath of air after years underwater. She laughed easily, listened gently, and acted as though loving Aria was effortless. Jonathan had wanted to believe her. He needed to believe her. For a while, it felt like life was offering him a second chance. But as he held Aria now, shaking in his arms, that hope turned sour. He remembered the sudden tantrums, the nights she refused to sleep unless he stayed beside her, the nightmares where she woke screaming for him. He had thought it was the transition to a new stepmother. Now the truth settled over him like ice. Someone had been hurting his child, and he had invited that person into their home. Savannah stepped out of the restroom, smoothing her hair, her expression poised, almost annoyed that the moment had been disrupted. "You're overreacting," she insisted, her tone light but edged with something sharp. "Arya needs discipline. She's becoming spoiled." Jonathan stiffened. The word pierced him. Marissa had used that same excuse for her harsh self-judgment before the accident. He shook his head, refusing to let old wounds cloud what was happening now. Arya clung to his shirt, whispering through shaky breaths, "Daddy, I'm scared." That word, scared, stabbed deeper than anything Savannah could say. He knelt to meet her eyes, promising, "No one will hurt you." When he looked up, Savannah was watching them with a blank, unsettling calm. Something inside Jonathan shifted, a quiet certainty taking root. He needed to find out exactly how long this had been happening. As he lifted Arya, her sleeve slid back, revealing a faint purple mark on her arm. His stomach dropped. That wasn't from today. That was older. He knew. Jonathan stood in the hallway outside the restroom, trying to steady his breathing while Arya clung to him like her life depended on it. Savannah approached slowly, her heels clicking against the tile as if nothing unusual had happened. The casual rhythm of her steps made Jonathan's skin crawl. He tightened his grip around his daughter, instinctively placing his body between them. Savannah folded her arms and sighed. "You're acting ridiculous," she said. "She threw a tantrum, that's all." Jonathan didn't answer. His eyes were fixed on the faint bruise on Arya's arm. It wasn't new. That single realization echoed louder than Savannah's excuses. He forced himself to stay calm for Arya's sake, but inside, something fierce was waking up. "Savannah," he said, his voice low, "tell me exactly what happened in there." She laughed, short and sharp. "What happened? I stopped her from slipping on a wet floor. Do you want me to apologize for protecting your child?" Her tone dripped with sarcasm. Jonathan felt Arya bury her face deeper into his chest. The truth was in her trembling. His pulse hammered in his ears. Savannah stepped closer, lowering her voice. "You need to control your paranoia, John. People are watching." Jonathan hadn't noticed the young woman near the counter staring with concern. Their eyes met briefly, but before he could react, Savannah blocked his view with a sudden shift of her body. Her smile stretched thin. "Let's go home and talk about this like adults." Every instinct Jonathan had screamed not to let her near Arya again. He swallowed hard. "We're leaving," he said. Savannah blinked, momentarily startled by his firmness, but then she recovered, tilting her head. "You're making a mistake." Jonathan didn't look back. He just held his daughter tightly and walked toward the exit, unaware someone else had seen everything and was already walking after them. She had witnessed the tension, the fear in the child's eyes, and the strange smile on Savannah's face, and she knew deep down that something was terribly wrong, something that could not be ignored any longer by anyone today. Jonathan had just stepped outside the McDonald's when he heard hurried footsteps behind him. He turned, tightening his hold on Arya, prepared for Savannah to chase after them, but it wasn't her. It was the young woman who had been watching from inside, her expression tense and uncertain. She hesitated a few feet away, glancing nervously toward the restaurant door. "Sir," she said softly, "I'm sorry to bother you, but I think you need to hear something." Jonathan studied her, unsure whether to trust anyone right now. Arya's tiny fingers curled into his shirt, still trembling. The woman took a deep breath. "My name's Victoria. I've seen that woman before. Your wife, right?" Jonathan didn't answer, but his silence was enough. Victoria continued, her voice low. "This isn't the first time something like that happened?" The words hit Jonathan like a punch. Victoria explained she lived nearby and brought her son to this McDonald's every week. 3 weeks ago, she said, "I saw your wife yank your daughter out of the play area. Hard. Too hard. I thought maybe your little girl had done something dangerous, but then the woman pulled her into the bathroom and didn't come out for a long time." Victoria's eyes darkened. "Your daughter was crying. I could hear her through the door." Jonathan felt his stomach drop. 3 weeks ago. That was when Arya suddenly became clingier at bedtime. He'd blamed it on the adjustment to having a stepmother. His jaw clenched as Victoria continued, "I didn't know how to approach you then, but seeing what happened today, I couldn't stay quiet." His throat tightened. "Why didn't you tell me earlier?" he whispered. Victoria winced. "Because I wasn't sure, but I took a picture from that day. It's blurry, but it shows her grabbing your daughter's arm." She pulled out her phone, hands trembling as she scrolled. But before she could show it, a cold voice sliced through the air. What exactly are you two talking about? Jonathan stiffened. Savannah stood behind them, her eyes locked onto Victoria, dark, sharp, and burning with fury. And she did not look afraid. She looked ready. Jonathan instinctively stepped in front of Arya, shielding her from Savannah's icy stare. Victoria froze, clutching her phone as if it were the only thing keeping her steady. The parking lot lights flickered overhead, casting long shadows that made Savannah's expression look even sharper, almost predatory. "Why don't you hand me that phone?" Savannah said, her voice soft but edged with threat. "It's rude to take pictures of strangers without permission." Victoria shook her head. "I have every right to keep evidence if a child is being hurt." Savannah's smile twitched, the first crack in her perfect mask. Jonathan felt Arya trembling, her tiny breaths fast and uneven against his shoulder. He had to end this now. "We're leaving," he said firmly. "Victoria, thank you. Please email me anything you have." Savannah's eyes flashed. No one is emailing anyone. She stepped forward, but a family exiting the restaurant glanced at them, giving Jonathan the moment he needed. He quickly turned away and hurried to his car. Savannah didn't follow this time. She just watched, her arms folded, expression calculating like she wasn't finished. When Jonathan reached the car, he buckled Arya in with hands that shook more than he wanted to admit. She clung to his wrist before he closed the door. "Daddy, am I in trouble?" He swallowed hard. "No, sweetheart, you're safe." But he didn't believe those words, not yet. He drove straight to the pediatric clinic that stayed open late, refusing to let another minute pass without answers. The nurse took one look at Arya's red eyes and ushered them into a room immediately. When the pediatrician entered, his calm face shifted with concern. After examining Arya carefully, he looked Jonathan in the eye. "These aren't fresh marks," he said. "Some are older, weeks old." Jonathan felt the floor tilt under him. Weeks! He had missed weeks of warning signs. The doctor exhaled slowly. "Mr. Reyes, I need to ask something difficult." He paused. "Are you absolutely sure your daughter has only been harmed recently?" The question cut deeper than anything Jonathan had ever faced before in life. Jonathan felt his throat tighten as the doctor's question lingered in the air, heavy and suffocating. He wanted to answer immediately, to defend himself, to say, of course this was recent, because the alternative meant he had failed Arya long before tonight. But he couldn't get the words out, not when the truth was staring at him in the form of faint yellowed bruises on his daughter's fragile skin. Arya sat on the exam table, swinging her feet nervously, her eyes darting between the doctor and her father. Jonathan sat beside her and gently took her hand. "Sweetheart," he whispered, "can you tell Daddy? Has someone been hurting you before today?" Her lips trembled. She lowered her gaze. "I didn't want you to be sad," she whispered, her voice cracking. "She said you'd be mad at me. She said you'd send me away if I told." Jonathan's heart shattered. "Baby, who said that?" Arya hesitated, tiny fingers twisting the hem of her shirt. "Savannah," she breathed. "She said if I told, she'd make you lose your job, and we wouldn't have a home anymore." Jonathan felt a chill crawl down his spine. This wasn't just cruelty. This was calculated, manipulative. Savannah had been controlling Arya through fear, and Jonathan, distracted by work, exhausted by grief, hadn't seen it. The pediatrician stepped out to document the findings, leaving father and daughter alone. Jonathan gathered Arya into his arms, holding her as she cried softly into his chest. Guilt pressed on him like a weight he couldn't shake. He kissed the top of her head. "No one is sending you anywhere. You're my girl, always." She sniffled. "There's more." Jonathan stiffened. "More what, sweetheart?" Arya brushed her tears away with her sleeve, her voice barely audible. "Savannah talks to a man, on the phone. She tells him what she does to me." Jonathan froze. "A man?" Arya nodded quickly. "She said he tells her what to do." A cold pulse shot through Jonathan's chest. A second person, someone giving instructions. This wasn't just abuse. Something far darker was happening. And Arya looked up at him with wide, terrified eyes and whispered, "Daddy, he knows where we live." Jonathan felt a coldness spread through his chest, the kind that came from fear and fury mixing into something sharp. A man, someone Savannah was reporting to, someone who knew where they lived. He pulled Arya closer, promising himself that whatever this was, it ended tonight. When the pediatrician returned with paperwork and a concerned expression, Jonathan signed everything with trembling hands. "We'll follow up," the doctor assured him, but Jonathan barely heard the words. His mind was already racing ahead. Outside in the cool night air, Arya clung to his neck like a frightened kitten. He carried her to the car with careful arms, whispering soothing words even though his own voice wavered. The moment he buckled her in, she grabbed his wrist. "Daddy, can we not go home?" Jonathan froze. "Why, sweetheart?" Arya's lower lip quivered. "She gets mad when you're gone. She locks me in the closet. She says the man will come if I scream." His vision blurred with rage. He'd trusted Savannah, trusted her smile, trusted her promises, trusted the image she crafted so well. And now his daughter was afraid to go back to her own house. That was enough. More than enough. He drove straight to his parents' home across town, gripping the steering wheel so tightly his knuckles went white. He left a message for Savannah, short, clipped, emotionless, telling her he wouldn't be home that night and neither would Arya. He didn't wait for a response. When they arrived, his mother rushed out, concern etched across her face the moment she saw Arya's puffy eyes. She took the child gently into her arms while Jonathan stood in the doorway, feeling like he was about to collapse. But he couldn't. Not yet. He told his parents everything, every detail he had ignored, every sign he should have seen. His father's face grew stony, his mother pale with shock. Arya clung to her grandmother as if afraid Savannah might appear at any second. Jonathan stepped outside to call the police, hands shaking as he reported possible child endangerment. But before he could press send on the recorded statement, his phone buzzed. A message from Savannah appeared on the screen. "You think you can take her from me? This isn't over." Jonathan stared at the message glowing on his screen, the words sinking into him like ice. This isn't over. Savannah wasn't scared. She wasn't remorseful. She sounded confident, almost triumphant. That terrified him more than anything else. He stepped back inside his parents' house, forcing himself to stay calm for Arya's sake. His mother rocked the trembling child on the couch, while his father watched Jonathan with a grim, steady gaze. "What did she say?" his father asked. Jonathan hesitated. "Nothing good." Before he could explain, headlights swept across the front windows. A car slowed down in front of the house, lingering just a little too long. Jonathan's pulse spiked. He moved to the window and peeked through the blinds. A dark SUV, tinted windows. He couldn't see the driver. The vehicle idled for several seconds, engine rumbling low before finally pulling away. His father stepped beside him. "You think that was her?" Jonathan shook his head. "Savannah doesn't drive an SUV, but he knew exactly who might. Damien, the man Arya had mentioned, the stranger Savannah had been talking to, someone watching them." Jonathan felt a shiver crawl down his spine. He decided to return to his house, not to sleep, not to stay, but to gather evidence, to prove what Savannah had been doing, to expose everything. His parents begged him not to go alone, but Jonathan insisted. "Arya needs justice," he said quietly. "I can't protect her if I don't know the whole truth." He drove toward his home, every streetlight flickering like a warning. When he turned onto his block, he saw that one of his living room lights was on. He stiffened. He hadn't left it on. Savannah was there. Vanna. As he pulled into the driveway, a neighbor, Mr. Caldwell, an older man who often sat on his porch, hurried toward him. "Jonathan," he whispered urgently, eyes wide, "I need to tell you something. Your wife? She's been having strange visitors when you're gone. A man came by your house twice this week. Tall, dark jacket, never knocked. She just let him in." Jonathan's stomach twisted. The man wasn't just someone Savannah spoke to. He had been inside Jonathan's home while Arya was there. Jonathan felt the world tilt as Mr. Caldwell's words settled into his bones. A strange man, not just calling, not just lurking, actually entering his home. While Arya had been inside, his fists clenched involuntarily, nails digging into his palms. "Did you see his face?" Jonathan asked, his voice tight. Mr. Caldwell nodded slowly. Tall, rough-looking, maybe mid-40s. He walked like he owned the place. "And your wife?" She acted nervous around him, not scared, more like she was reporting to him. Jonathan's stomach churned. Damien, it had to be him. The mysterious man Arya mentioned, the one Savannah had been obeying. He thanked Mr. Caldwell quickly, then approached his front door. Every instinct screamed for him to turn back, but he needed answers. He unlocked the door slowly, stepping into the dimly lit living room. The air felt wrong, colder, heavier, like the house was holding its breath. He scanned the room. Nothing looked broken or stolen, but something was off. A faint scent he couldn't place. Cologne, not his. Savannah's voice drifted from the hallway. "John, is that you?" Jonathan froze. She sounded calm, too calm. She stepped into view, hair perfectly brushed, makeup freshened, as if she had been preparing for him. "I knew you'd come back," she said softly. "You always do the right thing." Jonathan's jaw tightened. "Where is he?" Savannah blinked innocently. "Who?" He took a step closer. "The man who's been coming here, twice this week, the man you've been talking to." Her expression darkened, but she quickly masked it with a small laugh. "Oh, the neighbor told you some story, didn't he? John, he's lonely. He imagines things." But Jonathan had stopped listening. His eyes had drifted to a spot behind her, Arya's bedroom door. It was slightly open, and a shadow moved behind it. A slow, deliberate shift. His blood iced. Someone was in his daughter's room. Jonathan stepped backward instinctively, his pulse roaring in his ears. "Savannah," he said quietly, eyes locked on the door. "Who's in that room?" She tilted her head, lips curling in a chilling little smile. "Someone who's been waiting for you." Jonathan felt the air thicken as the shadow behind Arya's door shifted again, slow and deliberate, like whoever was inside didn't care if he noticed. Savannah stood perfectly still, watching Jonathan's reaction with a strange mixture of amusement and anticipation. He forced himself not to look away from the door. If he blinked, if he hesitated, if he made one wrong move, he didn't know what would happen. But he knew it wouldn't be good. "Step aside, Savannah," he said, voice low, controlled, trembling just beneath the surface. She folded her arms. "You should calm down. You're acting unhinged, John. This is why I told him you wouldn't be reasonable." "Him?" Jonathan repeated. She didn't answer. The shadow moved again. Jonathan reached for his phone, but Savannah lunged forward, grabbing his wrist. "Don't," she hissed. "You'll ruin everything." Her fingers dug into his skin, and the sudden aggression snapped something in him. He pulled his arm free with a force that surprised them both. He stormed toward Arya's bedroom door, pushing it open so hard it slammed against the wall. The room was dark except for the faint glow of Arya's nightlight. Jonathan scanned the space. Stuffed animals, tiny shoes by the dresser, a blanket on the floor, but no person, empty. A whisper echoed behind him. "Looking for me?" Jonathan spun around. A man stepped out from behind the hallway closet. Tall, broad shoulders, worn leather jacket, eyes dark and unsettling. He carried himself like someone who didn't fear consequences. Jonathan recognized him instantly. Damien. Arya's whispered fear was real. The man existed, and he was standing 5 feet away. "Well," Damien drawled, glancing around the house with familiarity that made Jonathan's skin crawl. "You've caused quite a mess. Savannah said you'd be difficult. I was hoping she exaggerated." Jonathan clenched his jaw. "Stay away from my daughter." Damien smirked. "She's the whole reason we're here, John." Savannah moved to Damien's side, her posture shifting, submissive, obedient, as if she were standing beside her true partner. "You shouldn't have brought the child to your parents' house," she said flatly. "We needed her here tonight." Jonathan's blood ran cold. "Needed her? For what?" Damien stepped forward, eyes narrowing. "You really don't know, do you?" Jonathan didn't move. Every nerve in his body screamed to lunge, to fight, to flee, but he needed to understand what he was facing before he made a mistake that could cost Arya everything. Damien took another slow step forward, studying Jonathan like a hunter measuring a wounded animal. "Savannah didn't marry you for love," he said casually. "She married you because you're valuable. You have assets, access, influence, and a child who trusts you blindly. That's leverage." Jonathan's stomach clenched. "Leverage for what?" Savannah rolled her eyes. "God, John, you really are slow when you're emotional." She crossed her arms, her perfectly polished nails tapping her forearm. "Damien and I have been partners for years. Successful partners. We find people with vulnerabilities and opportunities. You were perfect." Jonathan felt the betrayal like a blade. He'd opened his home, his heart, his daughter's life to this woman, and she'd been planning something from day one. Damien smirked. "Originally, we just needed access to your company's financials. You'd be amazed what a spouse can legally request." He shrugged. But then Savannah noticed something even more valuable. His gaze darkened. "Your daughter." Jonathan stiffened as a primal fear tore through him. "Don't talk about her," he growled. Damien laughed under his breath. "Relax. We weren't going to hurt her. Not physically. But you? You're predictable. You love that kid more than your own life. So if things ever went wrong..." He lifted one shoulder. "Threatening her would have kept you in line." Jonathan felt something inside him snap, a quiet, dangerous shift. Savannah stepped closer to Damien, leaning into him. "It would have worked too, until she started resisting me. That brat cried every time you left. She's the reason everything is falling apart. Jonathan's hands curled into fists. Arya is 3. She cried because she was scared of you. Savannah's smile sharpened. She should have been. Jonathan took a step toward them, fury radiating off him. It's over, he said. I've got witnesses, proof, you're both done. But Damien only shook his head slowly, amused. John, you still don't get it, he said softly. We're not the ones in danger tonight. Jonathan's breath hitched. What does that mean? Damien smirked. It means someone else is already on the way to your parents' house. Jonathan's world snapped into a single horrifying thought. Arya. His parents. Someone was already heading there. His pulse roared in his ears as he lunged toward the front door, but Damien moved faster than expected, blocking the exit with one solid step. Move, Jonathan growled, every muscle coiled with panic. Damien only smirked. You think I'd tell you our plans and let you walk out? Come on, John, you're smarter than that. Savannah leaned against the wall, arms crossed, casually inspecting her nails like this was some mild inconvenience. He warned you, she said. You shouldn't have taken her away. Now we have to accelerate everything. Her tone was almost bored, but her eyes glittered with vindictive delight. Jonathan's fear twisted into something sharper, rage. If either of you touches my daughter. Damien cut him off. Relax. The guy we sent isn't supposed to hurt her. Just bring her here. You made this complicated when you ran. We're just restoring order. Order? Jonathan spat. You're kidnapping a child. Savannah shrugged. We prefer the term insurance. Jonathan scanned the room, his mind racing for a strategy, anything to get past them. The windows, the back door, his phone. But Damien was watching him like a hawk, shoulders squared, ready for any sudden move. Jonathan needed time, seconds even, to find an opening. You won't get away with this, Jonathan said, trying to stall. Victoria saw what happened. There's evidence. The doctor knows. The police. Savannah laughed. The police won't get here before he does, and by then Arya will already be with us, and you... She paused, tilting her head. You'll look like the unstable one, a father spiraling after grief. It won't be hard to frame you. Jonathan felt the room closing in. His parents had no idea a stranger might be approaching their home. Arya was there, tired, vulnerable, trusting them to keep her safe. Damien stepped closer, lowering his voice. You should have stayed predictable, John. Now you've forced us to escalate. But then, faint, distant, a sound echoed from the front porch. A car door slammed shut. Damien and Savannah turned. Jonathan felt his heart jolt with hope or dread. Someone was already at the house. The sound of the car door slamming froze all 3 of them. Damien's head snapped toward the front window, his posture stiffening with alertness. Savannah straightened, for the first time losing the smug ease she'd been hiding behind all night. Jonathan's pulse hammered so loudly he could barely hear anything else. But he kept his eyes locked on the hallway, every muscle ready to move the moment he saw an opening. Another sound followed, footsteps on the porch, slow, heavy, intentional. Damien moved first, pressing a finger to his lips. Stay quiet, he whispered sharply to Savannah. She obeyed instantly. Jonathan felt sick. She listened to Damien like he was the only authority that mattered. Damien approached the front door without making a sound, his shadow stretching across the floor. Jonathan's mind raced. Was it the man they sent to take Arya? A stranger following Savannah's orders? Or, God please, had someone else arrived? A soft knock came, 3 taps, measured, confident. Damien's lips curled into a grin. Right on time. Jonathan's stomach dropped. Damien unlocked the deadbolt. Jonathan surged forward in a desperate move, knowing if that door opened fully, it could mean Arya's safety was gone forever. But Savannah grabbed his arm, nails digging in, her face twisted with fury. Don't ruin this again, she hissed. The door swung open, but instead of a hardened criminal or the mysterious man from earlier, a police badge flashed. Detective Harris stood on the doorstep, hand resting casually but ominously on her holstered weapon. Mr. Reyes? She asked, eyes shifting quickly between the 3 of them. We received a report of potential child endangerment. I'm here to ask a few questions. Savannah's grip loosened instantly. Damien stepped back, surprise flickering in his eyes for the first time. Jonathan exhaled a breath he hadn't realized he was holding, but this wasn't safety yet. The detective's arrival changed everything, and it could destroy everything just as easily. Detective Harris stepped inside slowly, her gaze narrowing as she took in the room, the tension, the strange arrangement of bodies. Is there something I should know, she asked calmly, that no one here is telling me? Damien's jaw tightened, and Jonathan realized the detective had just become either his greatest salvation or his most dangerous threat. Detective Harris stepped farther into the living room, her sharp eyes scanning every detail: the tension in Jonathan's stance, Savannah's rigid posture, Damien's coiled readiness. She wasn't fooled by any of them. "I got multiple calls tonight," she continued, her tone even. One from a bystander at a McDonald's, and another from a pediatric clinic reporting suspected child abuse. Savannah stiffened. Damien's jaw flexed. Jonathan swallowed, forcing himself to stay composed. "Detective, my daughter." Harris raised a hand. "We'll get to that. First, I need everyone to stay exactly where they are." Damien chuckled under his breath. "Detective, this is a domestic misunderstanding. You don't need to—" Harris turned her gaze on him with slow, surgical precision. "Sir, what's your name?" Damien hesitated. "I'm a family friend?" "No, you're not," Jonathan snapped. Harris caught the shift instantly. Her hand lowered to her holster again, not gripping, but ready. "Sir," she said to Damien, "step away from the doorway." Savannah interjected quickly, too quickly. "Detective, he's just here to help." "I didn't ask you," Harris said sharply. Savannah's mouth snapped shut. Damien finally stepped back, but not far. His eyes locked on Jonathan with a silent warning. "Don't." Harris turned to Jonathan. "Mr. Reyes, is your daughter with you tonight?" "She's at my parents' house," he said. His voice broke, "because she was terrified to come home." Savannah scoffed. "Terrified? She throws tantrums all the—" "Enough," Harris snapped. She moved closer to Jonathan, lowering her voice. "Does your daughter feel threatened by either of these two individuals?" Jonathan's gaze drifted to Savannah, then Damien. "Yes." Savannah's eyes widened, her mask cracking. "John, how could you—" But Harris was already moving. She motioned for both of them to step away from Jonathan. That's when Savannah snapped. "She's lying," Savannah shouted, voice shaking with fury. "That child is manipulating him. You don't know what she's capable of. We had to control her." The room went dead silent. Harris froze. Jonathan stared. Savannah's face drained of color as she realized what she'd just confessed. And Damien took one slow step back toward the hallway, preparing to bolt. Detective Harris reached for her cuffs, right as Damien suddenly lunged for the back door. Damien bolted toward the back door, shoving a chair out of his way as Detective Harris lunged after him. "Stop, police!" she shouted. But Damien was fast, too fast. He crashed through the screen door, sprinting into the yard. Harris drew her weapon and chased him, shouting commands that vanished into the darkness. Jonathan stumbled after them, his lungs burning, adrenaline slamming through his veins. Savannah stood frozen in the living room, eyes wide, breathing erratic as everything unraveled around her. Outside, Damien leapt over the backyard fence with a practiced ease that made Jonathan sick. Harris reached the fence a second later, radio crackling at her shoulder. Suspect fleeing on foot, male mid-40s, leather jacket, heading north between Maple and Rose. She climbed the fence without hesitation, disappearing into the dark after him. Jonathan stood in the cold night air, chest heaving. For the first time, Damien looked genuinely rattled. That meant something big, something dangerous was at stake, and he hurried back into the house to find Savannah pacing, tearing at her hair, muttering under her breath. The woman who once charmed him with soft smiles now looked unhinged, unmasked, dangerous. When she saw Jonathan, her voice cracked. He wasn't supposed to run. He promised he wouldn't run. She laughed a shaky, broken laugh. "This wasn't supposed to go like this. You were supposed to listen. You were supposed to trust me." Jonathan stepped back, tense. "Trust you? After what you did to Arya?" Savannah's expression twisted. "That little girl ruined everything," she snapped. "She kept crying, clinging, watching me like she knew. I had to make her behave." Jonathan's hands curled into fists. "She's 3 years old." Savannah's breathing quickened. "Damien said if I couldn't handle her, he would. I didn't want that. I was protecting her. I was protecting all of us." Her voice rose to a frantic pitch as she backed toward the wall. "You don't understand, John. Damien doesn't like being crossed. If he gets away tonight, he'll come back, and he won't just come for you." Jonathan's stomach turned. "What does that mean?" Savannah stared at him with wide, terrified eyes. "It means he never planned to stop with you, or your daughter." Jonathan felt his blood run cold as Savannah's words echoed through the room. "He never planned to stop with you, or your daughter." For the first time since this nightmare began, fear flickered in her eyes. Not anger, not manipulation, but genuine fear. She slid down the wall, hugging her knees as if she were shrinking under the weight of her own choices. Jonathan didn't pity her, not for a second, but her fear told him one thing: Damien was far more dangerous than he'd realized. Before he could press her for more, his phone buzzed violently in his pocket. Unknown number, his stomach twisted. He answered. A shaky voice filled the line. "Mr. Reyes, it's Victoria, the woman from McDonald's." Jonathan's pulse spiked. "Victoria, are you okay?" "No," she whispered. "You need to listen. I went to the police station after I left you. I showed them the picture. They pulled surveillance footage from McDonald's. Jonathan, they found something." Jonathan stepped into the kitchen, heart pounding. "What did they find?" "A man," she said, "the same one your daughter described. He was there tonight, watching. He left right after you did." Jonathan's grip tightened on the phone. Damien hadn't just been inside his house, he had followed them, shadowed them. Victoria continued, her voice trembling. "Detective Harris is sending units to your parents' address now. They think Damien might have circled back." Jonathan's vision blurred with panic. His parents, Aria. He rushed toward the front door, but Savannah scrambled up, grabbing his arm. "Jonathan, stop. You can't go there alone. Damien, he doesn't leave loose ends." Jonathan shook her off violently. "If he touches my daughter," Savannah's voice cracked. "You don't get it. Damien doesn't just hurt people. He destroys everything they care about. That's why I couldn't fight him. That's why I—" The front door burst open. Detective Harris stumbled inside, breathless, radio crackling at her shoulder. Dirt streaked her jacket. Her hair was disheveled from chasing Damien. "We lost him," she said urgently. "Units are sweeping the area, but he slipped through backyards. We think he's heading toward your parents' neighborhood." Jonathan felt his knees nearly give out. Harris met his eyes squarely. "We need to get to your daughter. Now!" Jonathan didn't wait for another word. He grabbed his keys, adrenaline flooding every inch of him as he sprinted toward the door with Detective Harris at his heels. Savannah called after him, her voice cracking with panic, but he didn't look back. Every beat of his heart echoed one name, Aria. Outside, the night felt colder, sharper, as if the entire world held its breath. 2 squad cars screeched to a stop in front of his house, their lights painting the street in violent flashes of red and blue. Harris pointed to one of them. "Get in, you're riding with me." He didn't hesitate. The moment the car started moving, the radio erupted with chatter. "Unit 3, possible suspect spotted near Elmwood, moving fast. Copy, proceed with caution. Child may be present at target location." The words made Jonathan's lungs ache. His parents' house appeared at the end of the street, porch light glowing warmly, too normally for a night like this. Jonathan flung the door open before the car even stopped. "Mom, Dad," he shouted, racing inside. The living room was empty. A cup of tea sat spilled across the coffee table, steam still rising. Detective Harris swept the hallway, hand on her weapon. "Clear," she called. Jonathan's father stepped out from the back bedroom, shaken but unharmed. "Jonathan, thank God, the police told us to stay inside." "Where's Aria?" Jonathan demanded. His father pointed toward the guest room. Jonathan burst inside. His mother sat on the floor, holding Aria tightly. The little girl blinked up at Jonathan, confused. "Daddy?" Relief hit him so hard he almost collapsed. He scooped her into his arms, kissing her hair. Harris exhaled. "We got here just in time." But before anyone could breathe, an officer rushed into the hallway. "Detective, we found footprints behind the house, adult male, fresh." Harris's expression hardened. "He was here." Jonathan held Aria closer. Harris turned toward the dark backyard beyond the sliding door. "And he's not done." The realization settled over Jonathan like a warning from the dark itself. A promise that everything was building toward a dangerous confrontation still ahead. Jonathan tightened his hold on Aria as officers surrounded the backyard, flashlights slicing through the darkness. Every rustle of leaves made his heart jolt, but he forced himself to stay steady for his daughter. Detective Harris approached, her expression grim yet focused. "We'll stay here until we're sure Damien is gone," she said, scanning the tree line. Jonathan nodded, though dread coiled inside him. Damien had been close enough to watch, close enough to take. That thought nearly made Jonathan shake. His mother placed a gentle hand on his shoulder. "She's safe now," she whispered. But Jonathan knew safety depended on stopping Damien for good. An officer jogged over. "Detective, we found tire tracks behind the fence. Looks like he drove off fast." Harris exhaled. "He's running because he's cornered. That's good for us." She turned to Jonathan. "We need all evidence you have. Everything Savannah said. Everything Aria told you." Jonathan hesitated. Arya was clinging to his shirt, eyelids heavy, face blotched from crying. He didn't want to make her relive anything, but he also knew this was the moment to end it. He knelt and met her eyes. "Sweetheart, the police need to know the truth so no one can hurt us again. Can you tell Detective Harris what Savannah did?" Arya swallowed, then nodded slowly. With quiet determination, she told Harris about the closet, the threats, the man on the phone. Every word felt like breaking glass in Jonathan's chest, but Harris listened carefully, her jaw tightening with every detail. When Arya finished, Harris stood. "That's enough to issue warrants for both of them. Damien won't get far." Jonathan felt a surge of conflicted relief. They were finally taking action. But before he could speak, an officer at the door shouted, "Detective, you need to see this." Harris rushed to the porch. A small envelope lay on the mat. Jonathan recognized the handwriting instantly, sharp, taunting. He opened it with trembling fingers. The message chilled Jonathan deeper than anything before, a silent promise that danger was rising tonight. Inside was a single note: "You can't protect her forever." Jonathan stared at the note in his hands, the words slicing through him like a cold blade. "You can't protect her forever." His grip tightened, anger rising past fear for the first time. He looked up at Detective Harris, who studied the message with sharp, assessing eyes. "This is the last move of a desperate man," she said. "He wants you scared. He wants control." Jonathan shook his head. "He's not getting either." Harris stepped back toward her officers. "We're locking down the neighborhood. No one in, no one out. We'll catch him tonight." Jonathan watched lights flash across the backyard as more units arrived. The net was tightening. Damien was running out of places to hide. Inside, his mother rocked Arya gently, humming to calm her shaking breaths. Jonathan knelt beside them, brushing a strand of hair from his daughter's face. "You're safe," he whispered. "I promise." Arya looked up at him sleepily. "Daddy, can we go home? Not the house with Savannah, but home." Jonathan felt his chest tighten with emotion. "Yes," he said softly. "We'll make a new home, a better one." A sudden shout echoed from outside. "We've got him!" Harris's voice rang clear. Jonathan rushed onto the porch just in time to see officers dragging Damien from the shadows behind the neighbor's shed. He fought like an animal cornered, but he was outnumbered. A final roar, a struggle, and then metal clicked around his wrists. Harris stood over him, breathless, victorious. Damien glared at Jonathan with pure venom. "This isn't over," he spat. Harris leaned down. "Yes, it is." Savannah was arrested an hour later, hiding in a motel on the highway. When Harris read her the charges, child endangerment, conspiracy, attempted extortion, her confidence shattered completely. By sunrise, both of them were in custody. Jonathan held Arya close as the dawn broke, warm golden light spilling through the kitchen windows of his parents' home. For the first time in months, Arya's little body relaxed against his, no tension, no fear, just peace. Harris approached, offering a small, genuine smile. "She's safe, and you did right by her. You both can finally start healing." Jonathan exhaled, a long, trembling breath. He kissed Arya's forehead and whispered, "You're safe now? Forever." And just like that, our story comes to a close. But hey, you're still here with us, right? If you're hearing these words, that means something in this journey touched your heart in a way only real stories can. So let's take a deep breath together and look at what this all truly means. This story reminds us of something powerful. Your instincts matter, especially when it comes to the people you love. The Stoic Marcus Aurelius once said, "The soul becomes dyed with the color of its thoughts." When fear and manipulation creep into a home, those colors spread quickly, unless someone stands up to protect what's good. Jonathan did, and we can too, in our own lives. It also shows that healing isn't loud or perfect. Sometimes it starts with one brave decision, one honest conversation, one person saying enough. Seneca wrote, "Sometimes even to live is an act of courage." And for Arya, for Jonathan, that courage created a new beginning. So if this story stirred something in you, maybe hope, maybe strength, maybe a reminder to trust yourself, then don't keep it to yourself. Like, share and subscribe so these stories can reach more hearts that might need them. We're here, together, and we'll be waiting for you in the next story.